And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Uprising, Curse of the Last Emperor. This is a pretty gigantic 4X style game. It is not a short game by any means, and it's a cooperative game. You're working together against an evil emperor who you're overthrowing, but also there's monsters everywhere. So it is a 4X game. You're going and exploring tiles. You are upgrading and getting new weapons and items and special abilities. You're building an army and going around and fighting the different bad guys that are out there. So all that put together, this can be played 1 to 4 players, all kinds of stuff. Let's take a look at it. I'm not going to go over every rule. I just want to give you some idea of how the game plays for purposes of my thoughts. Everyone is playing together against two just like horrific factions on the board. And you can see the colors here, purple and green. We have the Chaos and we have the Imperials. So the Imperials have garrisons that are on the board that go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. And the capital starts with 1 in, and this is a setup for a 4-player game with 4 factions fighting against it. So these garrisons are going to be spreading around, and there's a possibility of giant bad guys or evil, terrible bad guys showing up for the Chaos faction. That's the Imperial faction, I'm sorry. The Chaos faction has curses, which are going to cancel different things in the regions, and skeletons. And skeletons will be gathered around the board, and whenever there's 3 skeletons in the same area, you'll take them off, and you're going to put one of the giant Chaos monsters on the board. And so you'll see there's different monsters here. The monsters can change from game to game, and these things will be walking around fighting against you. Each player will have a faction. If you're playing one player, you can play with multiple factions. You're going to pick a hero. There are 2 possible heroes. Here you have Ronya, the Wanderer, and Hanzo, the Traitor. Each of them has different stats. So there's Might, Magic, Lead, and Guile. So it shows the numbers and their stats. And then these are the dice that you would roll. So if you're taking a test with Lead, you roll 1 blue. If you're in Guile, you roll 1 white or orange dice. And there are lots of different dice in this game with various sides to them that you're going to need for different tests. You're also going to have a whole pile of different units that you'll be able to purchase over the course of the game. Each of them will roll different dice in battles. They have different costs. There are different resources here for them. Your character is going to come with a deck of special cards. You're going to start with a couple of these in play. They tell you on them. For example, this one you start, so this gives you a special ability. And at the beginning of every round, you will draw a couple cards, giving you a possibility to get more special abilities, or if you draw a card like this, you're going to be able to stick it under your character and up your stats. So maybe my magic goes up by 1, or my might goes up by 1. I should mention what players are trying to do in this game is each player has a score token, and you want your score tokens to be ahead of both of the bad guy factions. The bad guy factions are not necessarily working together at all. In fact, they could fight each other. But you're going to score points for various things. The bad guys will get points. The Imperials are going to get points for areas they control on the board. The bad guys get points for curses. You get points for winning in combats and things like that. The good guys will have different ways to get points as the game goes by, but you have to be careful to make sure that even your worst players, so orange might be doing great, but the white player also needs to stay ahead of the enemy factions. On a player's turn, they're going to have a bunch of actions that you can take, and you're going to use tokens to take your actions. You can move your hero to an adjacent hex, and this is one of the actions that does not end your turn, so then you can pick another action. You'll just take turns taking actions in a row. You can always use trade, where you can always spend an action to get this resource. So there's different types of resources here. For some reason, elephants are the food resource. But these are the main actions that you're going to do. Command means you're going to be moving some of your armies around, which can go and get you into combat. Explore lets you flip over tiles to see what's underneath them. Haven lets you basically put your havens out on the board. You're going to have havens on top of these. This will increase, well, your victory points for 1, but also will increase the amount of resources you get each round. Market will let you buy cards that players can use, and Quest lets your main hero go out on a quest. I'm not going to go into all the actions in detail, but you're moving your hero around to do various things. You're going to reveal different tiles. And when you reveal a tile, sometimes they have these walls on them, which means that your troops can't move through them. Enemies can't move through them either. Your hero can be with your armies, but your hero doesn't fight. Your hero's going around doing quests and exploring things. When you flip over a tile, usually something happens here, you get some resources and things, but sometimes bad guys, like this one has skeletons placed on it, and controlling these can get you victory points and resources at the end of each round. There's another big giant board next to the main board here, which I'm showing you briefly, and on this board there's several things that are going to be happening. One of those things are quests. So there's going to be possible quests that players can do. So when you do these quests, you're going to be rolling dice using different stats, and if you're in specific areas, you will roll those dice, extra dice. So that says if there's 2 heroes here, roll this. Otherwise, you're rolling the dice for your stats. And like I said, the dice have different sides on them. Here's a little chart that shows you. So for example, if you're looking for skulls, they're on the black dice. If you're looking for shields, they're on the blue die and on the white die. If you're looking for the lightning bolts, they're on the magic die, the purple dice. So when you take a test, you're rolling a certain number of dice. You need a certain number of successes. So for example, in this ramparts test, you need 1 success, which means I need to roll 4 skulls, 1 shield, or 2 lightning bolts. So let's say I am using this character to roll for that test. So I'm going to get 3 red dice and 1 blue die. And let's say another hero, this says if your hero's on a wood hex, you get an extra blue die. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to roll these dice and see what I get. I got 2 skulls, which means I didn't pass anything. I failed the test. Oh, that wasn't a very good test. Let's try it again. Ah, much better. Here I got 5 skulls and a shield. So 4 skulls would have been a success. A shield would have been a success. I got 2. And each time you do these, you get some sort of bonus. But you only need 1 to pass. And if you do it, you read this and solve it, or something good will happen. If you fail, something bad will happen. Here, the Empire gets a point. So the more successes you get on something, and some cards require multiple successes, the better off you are. And these quests are going to be placed out at the beginning of each round. Also, when you're playing the game, you play through various chapters, and each chapter is going to have an event. You'll turn over this event, and bad things will happen, mostly bringing out monsters. So I showed you your heroes, and I've showed you what the monsters look like, but there are giant monsters that are going to be coming out onto the board. And you'll put a clip on these cards to show how strong that monster is. If you don't go and fight these monsters, they will continue to go up in how strong they are. And this will show you in range combat, they use this dice, in melee combat they'll use this, and you can see they start rolling a lot of dice. Combat is not that complex. This makes it look a little bit more complex than it sounds, but you're going to be rolling dice. But again, this is not where your hero rolls dice. This is where you're going to roll dice for the different units that you have on the board. And so there's always an archery round that you'll roll the dice first, which could take units off the board, and both sides are rolling those. You're looking for skulls to hit your opponent and shields to block hits from the opponent. And then if you roll the magic symbols, there are many different cards that let you do special abilities, but you use these to activate them. And this is going to go through, and you're just trying to basically destroy the other side and get rid of them. If you're fighting the base skeletons and the garrisons on the board, trying to destroy them, because you need to get rid of them because they're just going to grow and multiply. This shows you if you're fighting one of those giant monsters, then you're just going to be looking at the dice and the level that that card is at. Defeating bad guys can give you special points. Like, for example, this is Terminal. If you destroy this, you get 5 victory points by taking it out. Otherwise, you're constantly losing units, and so players are going to have to constantly use actions to buy new units, or at the beginning of your turn, you'll be putting more units out on the board, so you're trying to go around and collect resources to do so. The only other thing I didn't really talk about here, in another action, you can get items. Although you can only use an item if you have the ability in that particular color to use that item, and then you're going to pay to get these items, and they're going to give you various actions and cool things that you can do. So for example, this one here, you can discard to move a horde or a legion to an adjacent hex without activating it. So some of them are one-time shots, some of them you can use over and over again. Like this Twilight Bow here. I can flip it, which means I can use it once per round to destroy a skeleton here or an adjacent hex. Or I can discard it forever to destroy 2 skeletons. So I need at least a 1 strength to be able to use this, and it's going to cost 2 of that resource. There are 3 different kinds of resource in the game. One of them is used for moving, one of them is used for getting more troops, and some of them are used to buy items and things like this. There's a few other rules, like some druids will show up on different parts of the board, and they give you an ability that you'll be able to use, again, if you roll the lightning bolts on your dice. So players can play through fewer than 4 chapters if you want to play a shorter game. Other than that, you got to play through 4 chapters. At the end of the game, you're converting your resources, the extra resources, into points, and each player's points trackers need to be higher than both sets of enemies. So there's a lot of components in the box here. So we have our boards. On the top here, I do want to mention, I don't like some of the way these boards are done. So for example, here you have the board and the chapters are facing this way, the quests are facing this way, the market deck's facing this way, and to me it's a little bit of a mishmash of things in different directions. Then we have this rule book I do like. I like the spiral bound rule book. I think it explains things pretty clearly. I was very happy with the rule book. There's an event thing, an index here at the back, so very, very nice. The boards are clear. There's a lot of stuff on them. Maybe a little bit too much text on it, but that's a minor complaint. Then we have these here, so these nice trays. And in each of these trays, you have the standees. Now, the standees are kind of an interesting thing to me. I like the standees. I think they look pretty cool with the different characters, and I think that it's neat that they show what color die that you use with them. And then you got your little cards here, good quality cards, a little thick cards, but I like them. But I will say that while playing the game, the enemy standees, and so you can see here kind of the storage solution, it works well. The enemy standees, we found that sometimes they got lost on the board, especially the purple ones. Like across the board, sometimes a couple of these looked the same, I found. And they're very, very purple. Now, these pieces here, the little buildings here for the bad guys are amazing. They're really great. I love them and building them together. Trying to find the little pieces for you here. I think that's cool. I also like these little city, you know, the defensive rings to put around your city. The dice are good quality. I wasn't quite sure how to put everything away, so I actually shot down some of the ways it says to store it. Like you're supposed to store these in these 3 different things. That doesn't work very well for me. So I kind of spread it out a little bit differently. Like they say the dice go in here, and I'm not sure how that's supposed to work. So I don't know that it's a perfect storage solution, but the components for this game, for the most part, are really well done. Whew. So there is a lot going on in this game, and if you're thinking, hey, Tom didn't explain that one part, you're correct. But I went through all these different things in the game, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that love this game. I want to start here from the outset to say I am not one of them. I also don't hate the game either. I just found the game, for me, to be more work than it was fun. So this game is obviously built on the many different cooperative games that are out there. The obvious one here is Pandemic, where you have these, you know, the different buildings out there are spreading to adjacent buildings. Zombies are kind of going, and there's more to it than that. The zombies come together, make a big monster, and you go out and fight these monsters. The game feels overwhelming. I want to be clear that I'm not saying the game is too hard, because it's beatable. I know it's beatable. I'm beating it. But it doesn't feel that way. And I get that on one hand, that you're like, yes, that's exciting. You know, you're like, oh, all is lost, and yet we won anyway. But there's a lot of busy work in the game, moving the pieces at the end of each turn. You'll take time moving the monsters on the board, and there's kind of a a rubric that you're following to how they're going to move. Okay, this monster does this monster does this. You have to go fight these monsters. And what felt like work to me is I'm building an army. Take this army over. We roll dice in very, 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 very random combat. That is one thing I have a problem with. I have a problem with the dice rolling. I'll get back to that. But you have the fight, and you might win. If you win, yes, but your army is probably decimated. So then you build your army up again. In fact, the rule book tells you, like, hey, your army's going to die. Don't worry about it. Yeah, but it got kind of old building an army and then going out, building an army and going out. And those monsters, they're huge, and you would feel like, yeah, I knocked them down. As you hit the monsters, the big ones, their clip moves down the card, so they get weaker. Okay, that's kind of cool. But again, there was a lot of lack of excitement. Now, let me tell you this. I don't want this to come off as I didn't like anything about the game. I liked, at the beginning of each round, you draw 2 cards, and you pick one of those, and so you're customizing your character. That's really cool. I like that there's items that you can buy sometimes that also, again, make your character unique and interesting, and that each of the different factions have special abilities, and their units are different. All of that is neat. The pieces are cool. The game looks good. People are going to stop by. So I want to be clear. I know many people really like this game, and you might be one of those folks. And if that's the case, I'm so pleased for you. I'm just talking a little bit about some things that bothered me about the game. I felt like the game was both too long, and yet I tried the shorter version of it, and it felt a little unfulfilling. The longer the game goes, it is harder for sure because the bad guys have a chance to ramp up. At the beginning, you can kind of go around and do stuff. But there were too many little things that bugged me. I already mentioned a few of them. The dice combat. One of the things I think is neat in this game, it's not unique to this game. It came out, this was first used in a game called Descent from Fantasy Flight a long time ago. Rolling those symbols lets you activate special powers. It might be on the druids. It might be on ability cards. I can't tell you how many times in combat I didn't roll them. It's something like that I wish activated more often. And the different kinds of dice that are out there, it just felt very random, the combat. And some of the items and some of the things can mitigate combat some of the time. Usually if you mitigate combat, but then that thing's used over again. And it just wasn't as exciting, the combat, for me. There's ways to re-roll dice and things like that, but it just felt random, and the quests also felt kind of random. Like, whoa, I'm going to roll a lot of skulls. That seems like an easy thing to do, and then it just doesn't happen. And in a game this big and long, just getting decimated because of random dice rolling, or just trouncing one of those huge creatures, it doesn't feel as good because the game is that long. Also, the events that come out and the monsters that come out, sometimes and the exploration. I wish exploration was more fun, but most of the times you explore it, it's like, put bad stuff on this tile, and it slaps you around a bit. And then you have these mountains, and you're trying to put those in such a way that they let you keep moving your armies. At the end, it just feels like more work than the game is fun. But that's the way, again, it felt for me, because I've met people who are like, one of the guys in my game group says this is his favorite game. Okay? So I want to be clear that there are people out there who really like this. And I wanted to like it more. I think it looks gorgeous. There's a lot of cool ideas in here. But some of it just didn't feel like it really was like, this is, why do I like Uprising over many other, usually shorter, cooperative games? Well, there's the diversity of the different characters. Okay, that's kind of cool. An interesting theme. Sure, it's a little generic fantasy to some degree. The dice combat, nah, I've seen this kind of combat before, and then combat's kind of a lower point on this one. The exploration, nah. The fact that there's those towers that are next to everything else. The action point system, nah, it's okay. The fact that all the players have to have points ahead of the bad guys, and there's 2 separate bad guys who might fight each other, that's kind of cool. The fact that sometimes you don't really have a whole lot that you can do on your turn, and it feels like you're kind of fizzling out, I'm not as excited about that. Now I know, and you should read the comments here, because this is going to be divisive to some degree. There are people out there who love this game. Since this game has been published, they had another Kickstarter, and people love this one enough to really do the next one. And so, again, there's going to be an audience out there that's going to love this. And again, there were a lot of points to it that I thought were interesting. I thought, hey, oh wow, I'm getting lots of resources now. What am I going to do with these resources? I buy an army. But I just felt like the game for me didn't feel like I was getting as cool. The enemies got better and stronger, and I was slowly increasing, but not as much. And every time your army gets massacred, it's like, well, back to square one again. So, this is kind of a mixed review in many regards. I am recommending this for many people, but I'm not one of those folks. There's a lot of cool concepts here, and they did a good job at bringing it together. It's just, it reminds me of other games where you're kind of slogging through, and this one has that slogging through, like, okay, I'm doing this and going over here. I want to fight that monster. Well, it's going to take a while to get over there. First, I got to get to this tower so that I can get over that. But when I turn that tower over, now there's a thing in that tower. We got to take care of that first. And it's stuff like that. Or sometimes the event comes out for the chapter. Or sometimes that quest you thought you were going to complete, you didn't. And now what do you do? So, neat ideas, cool concepts. It feels different in some ways, but to me, it also felt like a lot of these cool new different things. When I looked underneath the hood, I found kind of the same old cooperative game that I've played many times in the past, but with a whole lot more luck and a whole lot longer play time. So that's Uprising: Curse of the Last Emperor. I'm Tom Vasel, and you're watching the Dice Tower. Dice Tower Judgment, a lot of cool ideas, but not for me.